Hello all. Today we are going to be covering Chapter 1. I'm introducing you to some communication models and terminology, and then we're going to talk a little bit about communication apprehension as well to kind of wrap up Chapter 1 and lead us into feeling hopefully a little bit more comfortable going into Speech 1 here in a couple weeks. So your Speech 1 assignment is presented in this week's Modules 2, so be sure to check that out. Start planning for that and email with any questions. Okay, so after you've done the reading, let's use our lectures to kind of couple the readings and pull out really important information. There's two ways that communication and public speaking influence our life, and they're narrowed down in our textbook into two long E words, if that helps you for studying purposes. So they are empowerment and employment, two long E words. The first of which is empowerment, and here I have this image, and it says, how does this image relate to empowerment? So what I mean here is that sharing of ideas, two brains is always better than one brain, right? So we can't share our knowledge and our perspective and our take on things or our ideas unless we have that ability to communicate and to communicate well. So empowerment, how can you share your ideas? Are you empowered enough to share your knowledge with others? All right, so having resources, information, and attitudes that lead to action and help achieve a desired goal. And my next bullet here is you're not just a paper person. And what I mean by that is leading into our next E word, which is employment. When you hand in a resume to become employed and you're hoping for that interview, right? You might get to the interview stage based on who you are on paper as a person, right? But then when you get in there to do the interview, if you can't answer these questions and put your best foot forward and tell people why you should be part of their company or why you are a good fit for the job, landing a job is going to be very difficult. So these two things kind of tie hand in hand here, empowerment and employment. You have to be empowered to be employed, right? Leaders are formed from those who speak up. So in order to be a leader, in order to lead the charge, in order to share your ideas, once again, you have to be able to speak up. So hopefully public speaking will really help you with that kind of stuff. Decisions are made by groups who consider lots of different ideas. If you can express your idea well, it has a good chance of being used. So even working in groups, talking to a large audience interpersonally, being able to share your ideas, feeling empowered there is key to communication success. We've talked about this a little bit. Employment is the second main reason to study public speaking. The most important factor in helping graduating college students obtain employment is oral communication skills. A lot of studies say that it's more important than your previous experience, your GPA, your major, and the schools you attend. So in almost every job posting you will see communication skills, written communication skills, strong written communication skills, strong oral communication skills. They're advocating for all of those things in one of the top 3 bullet points usually for most job postings. So this will help you, and again, empowerment, employment really tying together there as to why we should study public speaking in this course. All right, here I have a quote that says, having good communication skills in the workplace is all about being able to convey information to people clearly and simply in a way that means things are understood and get done. It's about transmitting and receiving messages clearly and being able to read your audience. It means you can do things like give and understand instructions, learn new things, make requests, ask questions, and convey information with ease. And obviously, guys, all of this is stuff that comes with practice, but hopefully we're taking the first step here in studying public speaking and in starting to feel more comfortable in preparing and giving these messages. The good news all is that much of this class is based on conversation skills, which you already have. We practice them every day, right? We talk constantly, whether that's through texting, whether that's on FaceTime, whether that's face-to-face, whether that's email. We are always communicating. We have those communication skills built into our lives, right? The ability to adapt a message to the given audience is key for this course. So obviously we're going to be adapting mostly to our peers, but then being able to take the skills we've learned in adapting to our peers and being able to adapt to other audiences throughout our life. So for instance, we don't talk to a 2-year-old the way we talk to our 95-year-old grandma, right? We talk probably a little bit louder with our grandma. And what do people always do when they talk to kids usually if you're standing up? You try and get down on their level and talk to them face to face, maybe with a softer voice and simple phrases and words, right? So that's a vast difference, right? From a 2-year-old to a 95-year-old. We're going to largely be focusing on our peers in this class. But really, the conversation skills, your public speaking skills, your communication skills are all already very adapted to this to the people you're talking to. And in this course, we're going to adapt it with our message and with our topics that we choose. All right, so what are some differences between conversation and public speaking? The first is that public speaking is more planned. So in our outlines, we're going to write full sentence outlines with everything that we plan to say. So everything that's going to come out of our mouth, we want to have written down in our outlines. Now we practice extemporaneous speaking, which means that we're not memorized and we're not read. So we have note cards as a guideline. For instance, I might say my attention getter, the first statement that I really want to make to the audience. I know what I want to say, but it might come out of my mouth a little bit differently 3 different times. I'm not going to say it the exact way 3 different times. And that's okay. That's extemporaneous speaking. You still got out the same message, the same goal, but maybe your phrasing was a little bit different. Okay, so public speaking is more planned. You're not going to write out and plan and practice how you're going to say good morning to your roommate. That's just natural. It just happens, right? So conversations are more spontaneous. Speeches must be carefully planned so nothing is left to chance. Public speaking is also more formal, so the slang and casual language we all use in conversation is not appropriate for the public speaking forum. So think about how you talk to your buddies, how you talk to your girlfriends, and that's very different than the type of communication you will bring into professional settings and into our college coursework. As an audience, we expect speakers to act and dress in a professional manner. So making sure that you're dressed up on speech day, looking good, ready to go, and you have that credibility built into your dress. All right, the roles of public speakers and audiences are more clearly defined. So in conversation, it's common for people to alternate listening and talking, right? You're always ready with a response. You're just going back and forth naturally. You're not really thinking about, is it my turn to speak or their turn to speak? In this course, you will speak and we will listen. So when it's your time to speak, your group, you're up, it's all you. You have the floor and we will listen. And we'll talk about how that plays into the different models of communication that we have here. But largely, the roles of public speakers and audience members are more clearly defined. All right, so this is the first model that the communication discipline came up with to explain the communication process, and it's called communication as action. The key here with this first model is that it's a linear model, so a straight line going from the source to the receiver. So the source in this case in our class is you, the public speaker, sending a message, your speech, through a channel. In our case, that's Zoom, our online platform, and then we, the audience, your group members and I, are receiving your message. There might be some noise that could possibly interfere with how the message is decoded by the receivers. So this could be something internal, like you skip breakfast and you're pretty hungry, and maybe that's hindering how you're receiving the message. It could be something like there's construction going on outside and that noise is really distracting you from the speaker and their message. But we realized here with this model that there is something missing. The communication as action model doesn't incorporate everything that happens when we send and receive messages. So what is wrong with this model? What is wrong with the communication as action, the linear model? So then we got this communication as interaction model. And I'm missing the source here. Sorry, this should say source in this blue bubble. The source. So they are sending a message through a channel. There might be some noise to a receiver. But what's missing there? Do you just get to the receiver and call it good? No, you're always looking for your audience members. Maybe they're shaking their head yes, nodding, maybe they look really confused, maybe they're actually sending you a message back, they're responding to you. Oh my gosh, So this message, or this model, includes that feedback here. They're giving you some feedback, whether that's verbal or nonverbal. And then this context here, the environment in which your message takes place, might really influence the message. And I'll give you an example here. I taught at the University of Wyoming public speaking, and I took public speaking at the University of Wyoming. I taught in the same classroom that I took public speaking. Same message, same content, same curriculum, but the context for me was very different in sending and receiving that message. It really influenced my take on the information, right? So that's just one example. The context is key in the communication process. So we'll go up here to some definitions. Source, we talked about. The public speaker in these instances, you. So it's your job to come up with a message in your head. So you're thinking about how you're going to send a message. You're noodling over it, figuring out how you're going to spit it out, right? So you're going to spit out your ideas, your verbal and nonverbal symbols, into a code. What we usually use is English here in the US, right? In Wyoming specifically. And that could be a difference in context. Say you're somewhere internationally or speaking with an international family, that code might be very different and really interfere with the message, right? And the message is the content of the speech. It's the information being shared. And I actually did my thesis coursework and my thesis on interpersonal communication and emojis. So emojis, like what you text with on your phone. So that is a code too, right? It's a verbal or nonverbal symbol for an idea or image. And you can figure out how you're going to encode those symbols into a message. Oddly enough, there's actually people that only text in emojis, and they know each other well enough, the source and receiver, that they can then decode the message, translate verbal or nonverbal symbols into ideas and images in their heads, and understand the message. So for instance, here I have this conversation. It says, hey, I think we should have steak tacos for dinner with the cow. And they said, and then they said, chicken? What about fish? So they're saying you're using emojis wrong, you're substituting them for words. That's not really wrong, it's just a different code, but you have to make sure that that code is understood by everyone in the interaction, right? So the receiver, a listener or audience member, has to understand that code to be able to decode the message correctly. And the channel, the medium, the visual and auditory means by which a message is transmitted from sender or receiver. Again, that could be something like Zoom, it could be FaceTime, it could be email, it could be texting, face-to-face, all those things. We talked about external noise, so physical sounds that may interfere with communication. So if someone's tapping their pencil or tapping their foot while you're taking a test, that's really annoying, right? Internal noise, physiological or psychological interference with communication. So physiological might be you're hungry. Psychological might be you're sad or you're stressed or things like that that could be hindering your communication process. And over here I said I just found out that this emoji is a high five, not a person praying. So the people that encoded this image meant it to be a high five, but what do popular culture use it as? Usually as a prayer symbol, right? So their message was not decoded by the same means that they had encoded, which is really cool. Okay, so feedback here, that response, verbal and nonverbal responses provided by an audience to a speaker, which all happens in a context, the environment or situation in which a speech occurs, including time, place, the speaker and audience's cultural traditions and expectations. But we're not done yet. We had communication as action, communication as interaction, and now we have communication as transaction. So communication is a simultaneous process. We send and receive messages concurrently. So the sender and receiver, it's not like I'm talking to you and then when I'm finished talking, you give me some sort of a response, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. Typically, you're nodding your head if you agree with someone or you are showing them that you're confused even before they're finished. You might be saying, oh yeah, like you do on the phone, right? When someone's telling you a story to let them know you're listening, you are giving them that feedback as they are still sharing the message. So it's a transaction. It happens simultaneously. I think of this like a bank. So when you go to the ATM and you put your card in and you're punching in your password and the numbers, what's the bank doing? What's the ATM doing? They're finding your account, pulling the money that you said, all while you're already doing the next step, right? So that is happening simultaneously. There's process going on inside the ATM and your process outside of the ATM, right? Same thing with communication. Something is happening with both the sender and the receiver concurrently. Alright guys, so now we're going to tackle kind of the elephant in the room and talk about communication apprehension moving into speech 1 so that you have some tools to help you prepare and hopefully mitigate, if not eliminate, some of your fears about public speaking. And I'm telling you some of these statistics here at the beginning because I want you to know that you're not alone in your fear. So there are 74% of people that suffer from some form of speech anxiety according to lots of national studies. The fear of public speaking actually has a name. It's called glossophobia, and there's not really a difference between males and females. It affects everybody. You're definitely not alone, and hopefully this class will help you move through that and become a little bit more comfortable in public speaking situations. So moving here into some content, a speaking apprehension, most people have an irrational fear that their audience is out to get them or waiting for them to screw up. And guys, the truth is nobody wants to see anyone screw up. It's uncomfy as an audience member to sit and watch someone struggle. I always have the feeling that I want to help them or make it better. So as listeners, it's our job to notice and recognize that most of our peers, if not all of our peers, are going to be very nervous going into speaking situations, and we can help that by being great audience members, listening effectively, and sharing that positive feedback. So this should be a very safe place online to learn these skills, knowing that you're not going to be an expert and that we're just practicing here in public speaking. So we have all these reasons for feeling nervous, the first of which is fear of humiliation, but again, knowing that everyone has to get up and give a presentation too, and we're all rooting for you in the class to do well. Concern about not being prepared, and I think that's something that we as ourselves can take care of, right? You can prepare writing your outline, practicing your message, practicing your delivery. You can take as much time as you need to prepare for speaking assignments. So that should be taken off your list. Always come prepared and know that you're ready to go. Worry about appearance. I always say check yourself in the mirror before you get online. Feel good about what you're wearing. Feel professional, and that should take care of that too. Pressure to perform. Guys, I want you to switch your mindset a little bit about public speaking. It's not a performance. It's a conversation with your peers, especially in this class, where you're just talking about something you're interested in or sharing something you're passionate about. And again, you're just talking. You're just having a conversation that you do all the time, every day. Okay. Personal insecurity. Guys, if you have certain things that you'd like to talk to me about specifically for this online format maybe, or some stuff, just personal issues that you have with public speaking that you'd like to chat about, feel free to pop into office hours and we can discuss any personal things with fears of public speaking. Concern the audience won't be interested. That's another one that you can take care of. You can really think through that connection to the audience and how you're going to get them to listen to a topic that you're interested in. That's something that we'll build into our speeches, so hopefully you can cross that off too. We'll get to that in our next couple chapters. Inexperience, I have the sticker over here that says, hello, I'm new. Well, we are all new. That's the point of this introductory public speaking class, right? So inexperience, again, everyone is in the same boat, and we'll work through that and get better together. So fear of making mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. A lot of times nobody's even going to notice that you make a mistake in your speech. So I just say keep moving forward, forget about it, on to the next thing. Again, everybody runs into those struggles now and then. Overall fear of failure. Guys, if you are reading your chapters, if you are preparing your outlines, if you are taking the time to practice watching lectures, the overall fear of failure is not going to happen. You're not going to fail this course if you are putting in the work. It's built for you to succeed. All right, speaking apprehension. So physical symptoms of anxiety, increased adrenaline, which kind of tries to this increased heart rate, increased blood flow, all these things, dilated pupils, increase in endorphins, lots of other things. Some people get splotchy or really red, all very common things with speaking apprehension. It's not just you that feels that way, okay? So knowing your apprehension style, and guys, don't get confused here. This is confrontational and average. Average does not mean the average person. It means the average heart rate. So most people are actually this confrontational style where you're most anxious as you begin speaking, and then your heart rate starts to taper off and you feel a little bit more comfy and you settle in. So most people are confrontational, that high spike, and then they're okay, they get better. Okay, inflexible, high levels of anxiety all the way through your speech, your heart rate never really drops. Average, maybe you're not a resting heart rate, but you're not super high, you're just hanging out in the mid-range. And insensitive, this is experienced speakers who have a very low heart rate the whole time. They're very comfy in the situation. Again, most people, guys, the 70% have a heart rate jump and then they calm down as they continue speaking. So understanding your nervousness, you're going to feel much more nervous than you look. I say fake it until you make it. So put on that professional front, go in prepared, and act like you are a pro. You're always going to feel more nervous than you look. Channel that nervous energy. Anxiety, when properly channeled, can be useful. So if you're an athlete and you played sports in high school or maybe even in college, when you're nervous for a big game, it actually almost helps you. You go out there with all that adrenaline and you put it to good use physically. So that's the same thing here, okay? Knowing your audience and choosing good topics helps too, especially if it's something you and your audience are interested in. It should be fairly easy to talk about. Tips to overcoming apprehension: don't procrastinate, guys. Write and practice your speeches. I would say give yourself at least 3 days where you can come back to it 3 separate times to prepare. And again, always selecting that good topic and organizing well. I encourage you to use note cards. You'll have to find the balance for yourself. You want to use them, but you don't want to overuse them. They should be a guide through your speech in case you happen to get lost, or it's just comforting to look down and know that your next words, your next phrases, your next points are all there for you. Okay. You want to know your introduction and conclusion really well. So thinking back to that confrontational style, when your heart rate spikes there at the beginning, that's when you're most nervous, and that's your introduction. So if you know that really well, then your heart rate will start to calm down and you can get to that conclusion and really hit that final message. Remember, our audience remembers what they hear first and last the best. So we need to really plan and practice those well. You want to make practice real. So standing up, full volume, practice in the mirror, have somebody video you. Make that practice real, just like you're going to do it online. Don't forget to breathe. A lot of people will end up taking huge gasping breaths in the middle of their message because they honestly forget to breathe. So it sounds silly, but really make that practice real. Breathe like you normally would, channeling any nervous energy. I mean, this seems silly, guys, again, but visualizing success. So thinking back to high school sports, you never went into a game the night before thinking that you were going to miss the free throw. You always pictured making the free throw or making that really cool move and layup, right? So visualizing success, never visualizing any possible failures, which is easier said than done. All right, replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts. So anytime a negative thought pops into your head, think how you can rephrase that for yourself. Focus on the message, not on your fear. Look for positive listener support in the audience. Seek opportunities to speak whenever possible, and focus on what you've accomplished. So maybe that's you're in your speech and you're thinking, yes, I've done my introductory note card. Or maybe you get done with speech 1 and you think, I'm a quarter of the way there. Focus on what you've accomplished. We're all getting practice out of this. Other things you can do, guys, channeling your nervous energy is like squeezing your chair and then letting go, and that's just release of pressure. Walking to class or walking around the block before you give your speech, just getting some exercise out. There's a lot of those things that seem, again, really silly in your textbook, but they'll really help you and you'll actually find yourself doing them before your speeches. So again, if you have any personal things or issues that you'd like to talk about, feel free to join me in office hours or send me an email. And happy preparing for speech 1.